All right, welcome to the Psych Guys podcast. We have Dr. Melvin Ways. We got a fun episode today. This is probably most appropriate for medical students. Maybe we'll even say like PA students, NP students who are potentially interested in working in the field of psychiatry, the best field of medicine. I think we can all agree. But you know, we went through medical school, so I think that we're going to talk a lot about our application process into psychiatry, you know, tips, tricks, don'ts. But, you know, I think we can collectively all agree that we're all lucky to be here, right? You know, psychiatry is trending more competitive. I know probably every one of us have been approached by medical students on some kind of advice, like what should I do to be in your shoes? Because I just feel really lucky. You know, this isn't exactly the path that I necessarily intended for me. I didn't think I'd be moving to Philadelphia in medical school by any means, but I'm stoked to be here. I would never get a chance to meet you two guys. So boom, let's get started.
Let's go. So I really wanted to have this conversation with you guys, you know, get it recorded for the podcast because, I mean, I'm a third-year resident right now, and it's still shocking to me till this day how many students I have reaching out to me and asking questions about the application process, what it's like to be a resident in the field of psychiatry, whether I'm content with my decision or not. So, you know, if I have people reaching out to me, I'm sure you guys have as well. And I really wanted to have you on for this discussion, Melvin, Dr. Melvin Ways now, because you are one of our interns at our psychiatry program here, meaning that you were a student not too long ago. I mean, honestly, for us two, you know, third-year residents, it wasn't that long ago either. But I think between, you know, the three of us and our collective experiences, hopefully we can provide some informative content that you guys can use and really decide if this is, you know, the career choice for you.
Yeah. Thank you guys for the introduction also, because, you know, one of the things that's important for me to set my foot in the door is, you know, even a student or auditioner, is when you guys welcome us into the process, whether it's, you know, us being unfamiliar or just not knowing all of the clinical information, you guys always are so welcoming at this particular residency and probably throughout psychiatry, which is a good reason to get involved with psychiatry as a residency, because that helps the learning overall when you become a young doctor. So, you know, just like you guys nicely introduced me here, I want to thank you guys for the nice introduction as a new intern.
Absolutely. I for one am super stoked that you ended up here at the program because I was actually the senior resident on our console service when you were doing your audition rotation. And I bring that up because audition rotation has got to be one of the most frequently asked questions. Should I do an audition rotation? Should I not do an audition rotation? So I don't know what your experiences have been like. I don't know if that's been posed to you, but if it's okay with y'all, I would like to start the discussion off there.
Yeah, I can take that because I'm, of course, the freshest off of that. I did a couple of audition rotations at this program where I'm at, which is my number one program. So typically when you're auditioning, you'll try and get the most attention from the place where you want to be. And I was fortunate enough to get several looks at this one place. But for other students, it might not be that fortunate. So you have to take different opportunities when it comes to auditioning, whether it's meeting with individual residents, building a rapport with even just one of them, or going to the meet and greets where you know, learn about their admin, you get to meet the attending physicians. Just doing different things to put yourself out there is essential. What did you do? Like how many auditions did you do?
Wait, hold on, Melvin, before we move on. So do you recommend students do auditions?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a part of the process, but also putting yourself out there through auditioning because it can be expensive. We can kind of, you know, graze into that later, but I'm different than the norm because a lot of students go coast to coast from their auditions. They can go from the West Coast to the East Coast. And that's kind of why I wanted to ask Dr. Noone's opinion because you kind of changed a couple of time zones coming here.
Right. So did Joon as well. You know, Joon came from Arkansas, actually.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
You know, and I guess for your question, you know, as you should do auditions or not, you know, I think you should do auditions, of course, to express interest, to demonstrate that you are trying to gain your knowledge in this world of psychiatry. But, you know, I went to a very small medical school that didn't have PNWU, Pacific Northwest University. We didn't have any associated, we didn't have any associated residencies directly with our program. There's a family med residency in our town, but that was about it. So, you know, very different than your traditional experience here at Rowan. Rowan is a bigger school. It seems to have exposure to really every residency right within the Rowan, the greater Rowan program, right?
Mm-hmm.
More or less.
Correct.
So that being said, it's look, I would advise students to do an audition rotation, but whether that's automatically gonna gain you a seat into that residency program, I think is not necessarily true. Sometimes it can help you, sometimes it potentially can hurt you, and at the end of the day, just the fact that there's more applicants than seats available, realizing that there's a lot of chance to this. What's your 2 cents?
So you said that it can potentially hurt you as well. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, and it's maybe you don't really ever know because you're not always given that feedback directly. And maybe it did help you, but just not help you enough. I rotated at a program pretty extensively that I really liked. I actually ranked higher than this program, and I'm here. So did it help me? Did it hurt me? Well, it's hard to really say. I also had kind of an interesting experience. I wanted to kind of get your guys' 2 cents on this. So living out in Washington State, and I don't want to, throw this institution under the bus, but I got an invitation to do an audition rotation with this program that's very prestigious. It would have been really badass if I matched there. But the scheduling of that audition rotation was extremely late in the interview cycle. It was like January or something. And they told me, hey, look, you can come do an audition rotation here, but we're not going to interview you.
Interesting.
At least they gave you straight up info.
Right. What
I
do you
thought
do?
that was the whole point of the audition. You're pretty much guaranteed an interview if you audition. Is that not true?
At least at this place, it wasn't. And this city was very expensive to, rent an Airbnb or a hotel for a month or whatever. Could there have been a chance that if I rotated there for a month, I could have wooed somebody and maybe someone would have canceled their interview? I decided to not do it. I didn't. This institution was so prestigious. I really thought the chances of someone canceling their interview there were slim to none. I didn't want to waste my money. I didn't want to waste my time. I wanted to focus on, improving my education on my own terms and optimizing my own experiences to my interests.
Okay. And I'm just going to carry on that conversation, Logan, because I think this can potentially help a lot of students that are debating whether or not they should do an audition rotation. On the topic of, look, we know if you show up, you perform well. If people like you, it's definitely going to help you, right? There's no denying that. Melvin, you rotated with me when I was the senior resident. One of my tasks was, in addition to running the service, was to evaluate your performance. And because we had a good experience, because I saw your work ethic, how you were able to get along with other staff members, and just your general presence in the hospital, I said really good things about you. And I would like to think that helped in hopefully, getting you an admission here into the program. So if you do have a good experience, if there are residents that, you get along with, they can absolutely be an ally for you. And when it comes time for the residency programs to submit their rank list, they are going to speak up on your behalf. But I would also encourage the students to reach out to residents that they've had good experiences with. If you're sure that you want to be at a program, reach out to them. Say, hey, this is my number one choice. Can you put in a good word for me? I think more often than not, the residents will be happy to do that. Because what am I interested in as a senior resident is I want to match residents who, one, want to be here, and two, who I know that I get along with, who I know is gonna, look, if I'm getting slammed on call, I want somebody there who's gonna, Melvin is gonna say, hey, Joon, I know you got a lot on your plate. Can you, I'm gonna help you out. Let me take care of a few cases for you, right? Because when shit hits the fan, that's the type of individual I want in my corner, because these things do happen. We do get slammed, and I want somebody reliable there, right? So I think a lot of the time students get caught up in, oh, my grades aren't this, I don't have this extracurricular, whatever. But I think you guys can be reassured in the fact that, at least from a resident perspective, what we look for on your audition rotations is this somebody I can get along with? Is this person teachable? Does this person work hard? Those are the main 3 things. All right. And on the other hand, there are certain times, and you talked a little bit about this, Logan, there are certain times where you do an audition and it may actually hurt you, right? This isn't a secret. I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you've looked through Reddit, you've Googled these things, and these things are out there. The warning signs, right? The warnings that if you show up and you don't do the right things, that it can bar you from a residency program. While I don't think that's absolutely true, is there some truth to that? I'm going to say yes, there is.
Agree.
Even in my experience, there's been certain students that certain residents recognize that, hey, maybe this isn't somebody that I don't want to work with. And those opinions have been voiced. And as residents, we do have a lot of weight in the potential rank list that the program sends out at the end of the interview season. So you're probably wondering, what are these qualities that causes somebody to, be looked upon in this regard? From my experience, I think the thing that really stands out to me is if somebody is not teachable, right? Like I said this before as one of the things that can help you. Like, is this person teachable? Yes or no? Okay. In what ways are they not teachable? So for example, I had a student, we were in the middle of a busy day, and I asked the student, like, hey, do you mind running down to the ED and seeing this patient? And, bless his heart, he was like, yeah, I went to med school in Arkansas. I picked up a little bit of the lingo there. He was like, I don't know. I don't feel ready. I don't feel comfortable, which is fine. But really in that situation, all we're really asking you to do is just try. Just go say hello. If the patient's like not willing to talk to you, like, that's fine. Just give it give it the old college effort, right? Just try. But if we constantly have to like poke at you to, take initiative to go see patients when everybody else is busy, right? That can look very, very badly on you. So that's one experience that kind of sticks out in my mind. I don't know if you guys have any stories that might be helpful for some of the students listening.
Yeah, sure. I mean, even one of my classmates, when I was during my emergency department rotation, I told them, I'm at psychiatry. When you tell people that, they already kind of write you off like, oh, you're going to be that type of doctor. You don't care to learn here. But I was involved and engaged, seeing patients, building rapport. And by the end of it, they said, oh, wow, you're so much better than the last student. And they also wanted to do psychiatry. And I said, and I said, it's not me personally, wanting to do psychiatry. I'm invested in learning. So as long as you're that type of student throughout your medical school career, and as a resident and as a doctor, you just want to be a lifelong learner. I think that's a principle we're all taught. People kind of see that, and that starts with being engaged, just being present and seeing what's going on so that you're more capable in the future. And even to play devil's advocate, when you try too hard, you kind of do make a wrong impression. Sometimes it's better to just observe and to just be a part of the team and the capabilities that you have. You don't have to extend yourself too much, because that can rub people the wrong way. Sometimes you do get in the way, and it's okay to realize that you have limitations. And so, when certain programs, like you said, what would bar you from applying somewhere? Logan, I really do applaud that program for telling you that, because I think one of the first barriers is the program ready to take you? And you can try as hard as you might. If they don't have a capacity to take you, if they're already filled up in their spots, you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're not making your best impression where you might be able to do that elsewhere, or spending that money. And all of those things become detriments to you, even though you're making your best effort, and you are probably making a great effort. So that is something where I really do believe, students have to be more calculated and listening, and even asking their residents, is your program interested in taking this type of resident? You kind of have to work those questions in. It's hard.
Right. Okay.
What do you think, Logan? I mean, did you have anybody who was like advocating for you? Because you came across so many different places. How did you even build a rapport in that way?
I wish I could tell you. I mean, who really knows? And that's why it's like, although this wasn't necessarily my first ranked program, like, did I get completely written off those other programs? Did I miss it? Was I like the next slot that would have maybe matched? These are all kind of unknowns, right? And so that's why, I think all this comes down to is like a simple kind of statistical analysis, like I touched upon earlier. There are more applicants than slots. And, I have the confidence that all three of us are going to make great psychiatrists, but how well can you really articulate that and show that in this little stupid ARAS application, these letter of recs, these personal statements? Our being is so much more complex than those things. So, what I chose to do, instead of spending the money on that audition rotation, living in an expensive city in a place where I did not think that I would actually gain an interview, I just applied to more slots. I imagine you, or more places. I imagine you two did the same thing. I kind of wanted to respond to something you said, Joon. And you were kind of talking about this earlier. I've encountered so many medical students. Like, I think we have a really good program. It's really nice and gratifying that medical students do want to come here. And I think sometimes students get so caught up in putting their best foot forward. They're so nervous. They're so, and quite frankly, if a student asks me, hey, can you put a good word in for me? Like, I'm not definitely going to do that. Like, only if I feel strongly about someone, I would actually advocate for that person. So I think what it comes down to is kind of what you were saying, Joon. Like, at least our perspective as residents is, I don't need a colleague that's the smartest. I need a colleague that's willing to work, that's not lazy, and like you said, Joon, like teachable. That someone that's willing to be open-minded, accept that they will make mistakes, that they can learn from their mistakes, that they respect, in a sense, like kind of the hierarchy of this whole thing. That the senior residents, they've seen a lot more cases. They are there to try to help you and advise you and teach you, because I've had medical students that not to throw our surgery colleagues under the bus, but they what am I trying to say here? They try to one up each other always. Like, I have sometimes medical students all auditioning, in a sense, it seems like, at the same time, and just trying to even like one up me, or just like look so good in front of the attending. And it's like, I would just advise students, just try to focus on being a human. Try to focus on someone that can communicate and get along with someone else, because I think the most valuable part of this residency, and I imagine other residencies, I hope, is not always necessarily our interactions with our attendings, arguably not even always the interactions with our patients, but it's the bonds that you form with those fellow residents. Hopefully those similar bonds can be with you throughout your entire career.
Oof. Preach. Preach.
I wrote that one before we started.
Nice. We'll clip it. We'll clip it for our social media pages.
That was good.
Yeah. All right. So I think, just piggybacking off of that, I think students at times, especially on these audition rotations, they feel a lot of pressure to know stuff. They want to showcase their knowledge. And I think to a certain degree, that's a really good thing, right? We definitely want you to know the basics, right? Mm-hmm. There's a certain level of expectation. But when it goes beyond that, when it goes to the point of trying to one up the resident, one up the attending, it's just like, from our perspective, is it doesn't come off as very teachable. It comes off as like kind of a know-it-all attitude, and you end up unfortunately coming off as somebody who's very difficult to work with. So I think a lot of people, should take comfort in that fact and just kind of take some of that pressure off themselves. I have friends that are doing auditions right now, and they're like, I need to study. I need to make sure I know the intricacies of every single SSRI, antipsychotic. It's like, hey, no, you don't. Just make sure that just know the basics. Just know when you're starting somebody on Depakote, you need to check out FTs, like stuff that's in sketchy, right? Just basic stuff like that. First aid, sketchy. Like, if you know that stuff, you're golden. And we also don't want you to know everything, because then, like, what the hell am I going to teach you guys, right? We also want to have an educational conversation to be able to dive into topics, give you guys topics to read about, teach me. And I think that's one of the things that students may at times not recognize about residents. Like, I don't know everything. Especially if you're like a few years behind in training, it seems like that person who's like 2-3 years ahead of you knows everything they haven't figured out. But in reality, they know like a tiny sliver of what they're actually going to end up knowing, hopefully by the time they're well-seasoned psychiatrists. So we have to recognize that this is a learning process for everybody, and there's no shame in saying that you don't know, unless it's the basic stuff. Yeah. If you don't know the basics, that looks bad. But anything beyond that, I think it's just an educational opportunity. And I almost prefer that my students don't know like pharmacology to the level that I know it.
I agree. And in that same vein, like one-upping your teammates is in this category of working too hard, or not working too hard, but not doing the hard work. It's a difference between trying to one up somebody and trying to look good and doing the hard work. And the hard work doesn't have to be being super impressive or over the top. It can be as simple as like helping your teammate log into the computer, or helping them figure out how to do some orders in the note. Or even like showing someone around the hospital, like, trying hard doesn't necessarily equal hard work. It's sometimes over the top type stuff. Like people will like bring you gifts as a resident. They'll be like, oh, I bought this for you. Like, and I hope this makes a good impression. Like, here's these donuts or something stupid. And I'm like, all right, cool. But that doesn't show me anything about you. But if I see you helping your teammate, or if I see you like walking somebody to the front door because they needed directions and they didn't know how to get there, you stopped your day and like helped a patient, like that, for me at least, makes a bigger impression about, you know, who you are as a person, more than like the fact that you're trying hard in that sense. So I'd rather you work hard genuinely than try hard and try to one up me or impress me with your gifts or your exquisite knowledge. You know, I'd rather you see those small things. And like I said, like kind of do the things that you're good at right now. And then we'll go to the next level together. We'll learn together and I'll show you how this kind of patient interaction goes from, you know, this level. And I think that's really valuable. Like I like to see people kind of do that part where they just be themselves. Like that's how you get to know the most about people and how they'll contribute. But before then, that try hard phase is really awkward. I'm starting to learn that from medical students.
Right. It's definitely a different perspective once you're on the other side of after you're a med student. Once you're as residency, it's like, okay, well, I'm thankful I matched, but you know, you do see nervousness and stress, and I definitely was that medical applicant too. You know, I came from a medical school and kind of like Joon, like, and there wasn't anything too much close, right? And so yeah, like your original question earlier, it's really hard to kind of make yourself stand out, especially if you don't have a chance to do audition rotations. And I remember things that I did that it's kind of crazy. Not all applicants do is like attend, like you were saying, attend those little dinners that were normally before the interview date. You know, my year was during COVID, so all of this was virtual. So they'd be like these meet and greet settings normally before the interview, and just trying to be there. And, you know, who exactly knows why me and Joon got lucky enough to match at this program? At least what I've been told by some of my seniors was that I at least seemed normal. What I mean by that is like a human. Adam and Michaela actually told me, funny enough, that they were like, you talked about how your sister lived in Philadelphia and that you could see yourself, you know, being happy here because you could move your family here, you'd have your dogs, and those are actually the things we remember about you. So it wasn't some like fantastic answer I had about my passion for psychiatry and my dream to change the psychiatric world. It's that, you know, my humanistic qualities is perhaps what made myself stand out a little bit more. So one of the most common questions that I got asked in interviews for psych residency is, tell me about how you can remain your happiness, your stability in this residency, because it's so stressful at times. Did you guys get similar questions like that?
If I can answer for Joon, because I remember being very impressed about this when you told me you used to volunteer at a community organization that was involved in mental health. And
Please answer for me. I have no answer. Go ahead, Melvin.
And you told me like I think it was up in New York, and people would come and like have these group discussions about things that were difficult, and they would say, you know, some of the more sensitive mental health issues that they weren't necessarily telling professionals, but they were comfortable talking about with their community members. And you were one of the group leaders in these discussions.
Yes, sir. I used to be a support group leader for young adults in my Korean American immigrant community, dealing with anxiety, depression, most of it just seemingly regular day stuff, right? A lot of young kids dealing with divorced parents, bullying, self-image issues, being backstabbed by friends, a lot of stuff that seems like a normal part of life, but at the same time has such an impact and such a grip on these people's lives. And for me, it was just such a privilege to be able to hear those stories. I mean, stories that they didn't even tell their parents. And here I am, first time, like a nobody in my eyes.
Professionals, they didn't tell anyone.
Exactly.
Right.
And they were willing to share all this with me. And that was one of the big impetus for me to develop this passion for the world of mental health.
Yeah.
So I love that.
I have a question for the two of you, and I'm going to answer last, and I want you guys to try to answer as if I wasn't in the room. And here's what I mean by that. I've seen a lot of Reddit posts and just other, you know, random posts about people applying to psychiatry, and in their personal statement saying, I have PTSD, I experienced this, blah, 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 and that's why I want to go into psychiatry. So before I respond, before I give my 2 cents, I'm very curious if a medical student approaches you with that question. Hey, I want to go in this field because of my experiences with depression, because of my mother with schizophrenia, blah, blah, whatever it is. What do you advise them? What do you talk to them about?
So the question about self-disclosure. Yeah. Should you self-disclose or should you not? Okay, so I think you'll get different answers depending on who you ask, but my personal opinion is that as long as it's genuine, I would encourage individuals to share, some of the struggles that they went through, because at the end of the day, that is a big part of why you're applying to be a psychiatric resident. Mm-hmm. Going through those tough times, it gives you the empathy to understand the struggles of others. It gives you compassion. It also gives you a better appreciation for life. And I've never shared this before, but since we're on the topic of self-disclosure, honestly, one of the things that jump-started my interest in the world of mental health, of course, that experience with the support group leader was one of them, but that was a little bit upstream of where everything started. Everything kind of started for me. I had my heart broken by a girl when I was in college, and I felt like I was betrayed by my closest group of friends. And at that time, I was like 21, 22, like it was all about the boys, right? The homies, we gonna be boys for life. We always gonna be together. We gonna stick together. We're gonna do everything together.
Bros.
And exactly. And that was my world. And to feel like I lost the trust of not only the person that I was dating, but my closest friends who, honestly, the boys hurt me more than the girl. The girl was like, okay, whatever. But the boys, I thought, I was in my young, naive stage, if I could call it that. And I was like, oh, this, we gonna be together forever. This is it. So having gone through that, like, man, I was depressed for like a good year and a half, like 2 years. I remember it got to the point where there's a song by Frank Ocean. Is that his name, Frank Ocean?
Yeah,
right?
You got that right.
Okay, because the song is called Ocean. So I was like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it goes, I'm about to drive in the ocean. I'm not going to sing it, but those are the lyrics. And man, there was a time where I used to just drive my car and just listen to those lyrics and just kind of have those passive suicidal ideations. Mm. Looking back, I should have gotten some help. I did not know what help was available to me at that time. But dude, just coming out of that experience, I was just like, man, if I was feeling this way from this little thing, I wonder what this person that's actually cutting on themselves, I wonder what he's going through. I wonder what she's going through. I wonder what kind of life experiences that person has. So I feel like it gave me a lot of empathy for the struggles of other people. I felt like it gave me the emotional intelligence to relate to other people. And hey, look, if you've made it through medical school, we know you're a stable individual, right? You're responsible, you're dedicated. We know that we can trust you to hold yourself to a certain standard. So if you've met that, I think self-disclosing some of the past negative experiences, some of your traumas, I think that just adds to what you can say about your character, about the type of person you are. So generally speaking, of course, nothing is absolute. I think I'll be pretty encouraging of it.
That was really, really nice for you to self-disclose that. And I really think that the important part is that you said, before I even answer, is you said that you kind of had an experience helping people, hearing people before you asked for help yourself. And so many people feel guilty about that. Like, I kind of knew what to do, but I didn't ask for help, and I should have known what to do. And I wish I knew what resources, and I'm glad we're having this conversation. And so that's where that lies. But in the terms of applying and being a person who is attractive in that application process, you have to be authentic. You have to be that genuine self that translates to other people. So when people write letters of recommendation or they give reviews about you, that same person kind of speaks through over and over. And even in your personal statement, that should kind of have the same kind of theme. So for me, with like my personal statement, I talked a lot about like actually a reluctance towards psychiatry. When I was applying to psychiatry rotation, my entrance into medical school, my personal statement talked about my mom's suicide attempt. And that was something that was very personal for me growing up. It was when I was a teenager, and it was a really tough lifehood event because it went beyond that one instance. We had issues where I had my own mental health issues and had depression and other issues trying to process this existential crisis, essentially. But for me, seeking help through multiple therapists, multiple attempts, the whole frustrating bit where patients tell you, "Oh, I've tried that, I've tried this, I've tried." Mm-hmm. I kind of went through that and almost gave up hope to the point where I got to medical school. I didn't want to be involved in psychiatry, and then saw all the wonderful things that Joon was doing and everyone's doing on the unit that made me change my mind and realized that people, even in my own family, like my mom, like my brother, were getting actual crazy amounts of help, like life-changing, ideas and thoughts from just talking to people who have been through these experiences and learning about ways to cope with these things that didn't involve just some, miraculous like aha moment, where it's actually just putting in the work that everybody else has to do. And that's one reason that I got involved in, is because I like to see that progress. I'm an athlete, so like I like to see the small, integral growth in people. So with mental health comes that way. It's the same exact thing. You do these small exercises, cognitive behavioral therapy, or whatever types of little things to make small resiliencies in yourself. So I love coaching people up that way.
So I think we just gave 2 long-winded answers to say, yes, we do encourage self-disclosure. What is your take, Dr. Noone?
I don't know. I mean, it's like my path towards psychiatry, I feel like, is so closely aligned with my self-disclosure. Before even medical school, I was working on a side gig. I had a normal job, but as a public speaker for National Alliance of Mental Illness and Mental Health America, like sharing my my experience with bipolar disorder. So, in my opinion, I almost felt like I couldn't tell my story to psychiatry without self-disclosure. It felt like, in a sense, I was lying. Like, for me, it wasn't really a choice. Now, all that being said, like, I think self-disclosure has the potential to help, but definitely also hurt. And like we kind of talked about earlier, like, there's so many unknowns in this application process. Are there applications that I sent out that I did have the right board score, I did have the right GPA, extracurriculars, all these things, but someone in that committee read that I have bipolar disorder and automatically put my application down? I don't know. The opposite is true too. Maybe that's what led to me getting interviews, getting selected, standing out amongst the crowd. So what I would at least advise is, can you tell your story without you disclosing, or kind of like what Melvin was saying, like, is it so close to your heart, so close to your identity, that it'd almost be a lie to yourself if you weren't to self-disclose in that experience. Second is also, I think the basic concept of it's okay to disclose scars, but not wounds. And I'll be the first to even let the audience know there's a lot of things about my personal life that I choose not to disclose to the public audience. And there's certain things I do, so I think if you do choose to self-disclose anything, you have to do so with extreme caution, with delicacy, and really think this through. So I encourage, the listeners, because it seems like there's almost like this cultural trend where people do feel more comfortable self-disclosing mental illness, which is fantastic. I'm all about it. But realize that disclosing a mental illness is not going to buy you into a psych residency spot. There's a million different, not a million, but, a lot of our colleagues deal with mental health patients. And one of the most basic questions I remember getting when I self-disclosed, it's like, you have bipolar disorder. You could easily go work as a family med physician, IM, ED, or you don't necessarily have to work within mental health. You can still do all this advocacy stuff on the side. Like, why psychiatry? Realize that your experience with mental illness is not necessarily going to get you into that psychiatry position.
Ooh. Right. I think it's more a way of showing character. It's not a free ticket into the world of, residency in the field of your choice. And, I just want to point out that we all have, the 3 of us here sitting here today, we all have vastly different experiences, and we may have different advice, different advice for the same question, right? So I bring that up to point to the fact that at the end of the day, like, this is your application. You need to filter not only the advice that we're talking about here, but that you're getting from other people through the filter of your own experiences, through the filter of your own values. And at the end of the day, you need to make a choice that you feel comfortable with, that you can live with at the end of the day. Okay, so maybe we can wrap up this podcast on this note. So I'm just going to bring the episode back around to, to the early portions where we were talking about if you should or if you shouldn't do an audition rotation. I feel like I have a vastly different experience. I have a different perspective as well. So I didn't do any auditions. The reason for that is, to be honest with you, I was just fucking burnt out from taking step 1, step 2, complex level 1, level 2. And I was just like, I've already done all this work. Like, I can't do it for the sake of my sanity. So I'm going to choose to forego this opportunity, and I'm just going to take it easy, and I'm just going to apply. And my thought process was, hey, look, people do all these auditions, but a lot of the times it's not uncommon for somebody to not match at the programs that they auditioned at. A lot of the times they'll go to a different program somewhere else. So the real value in those experiences is, that exactly the experience in itself, the clinical knowledge that you gain. So I did miss out on that, admittedly. But at the time I was thinking, hey, I'm going to start intern year. That's what intern year is for. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn it fast. And that has been somewhat true in my experience, right? We all start out first day of intern year. None of us know anything. Some of us may know a little bit more than the other person, but generally speaking, around like 3-4 months in, everybody like generally catches up because you get stuff thrown at you and you're thrown into the fire and you've got to learn. You have no other choice. So I feel like that didn't really hurt me. And in fact, I feel like I really made the right decision because I was very, very severely burnt out. I was questioning like if I had made the right choice by even attending medical school. And I really took that 4th year to say like, hey, I'm here as a medical student. I passed my boards. I'm going to get a chance to apply to the specialty of my dreams. And how much more do I need to do? When is enough enough? Like, am I satisfied with the effort that I put in? Or do I need more? Because if I do this audition and maybe that can get me into a certain program that I might have not had a shot at. But what's to say when I show up at that program, there might be a leadership opportunity that I could pursue. There's always something else, man. When I was a kid, I used to look at doctors and I used to be like, man, these guys have it all figured out. They're done. It must be amazing to feel like you've achieved what your goal is and then you're done. You just got to cruise. But now being on the other side of it, I recognize that it's endless, right? There's leadership positions. There's that promotion. You can always get a higher salary. You can do fellowships. It's just like, it just keeps going and going and going. So I really asked myself in that situation,
it is
like, is this enough for me? And balancing that question out with where my mental health was at the time, how burnt out I was feeling from step 1 and step 2. And to a certain degree, I feel weird saying that because step 1, like it's been a year since I took step 1 and I was just like, I still feel burnt out from that damn exam. So I just made a very conscious choice not to do any auditions. Granted, my board scores were slightly above average, so I felt pretty confident that I was going to match somewhere, right? So I would advise that if you're a student and unless you're in a position where you feel like you need to do everything that you can to maximize every little percentage point of you trying to get that position, I don't think not doing that audition is going to be detrimental at all. In fact, I think I want to give a reminder to the students listening that it's the whole of your application, right? That audition rotation, that's just frosting on the cake, baby. There's so much stuff that you've done prior to that that's going to factor in. And we have to keep that in mind. And everybody is in a different circumstance, right? By the time you're applying, I was 30 when I applied. Probably 29. I was 30 when I graduated. I was 29. And that's usually, maybe the average is like 27 or so, maybe a year or two younger. But the point here is that by the time you're applying to residency, you've lived 20, 30 years of life and had experiences that are so vastly different from the guys that are sitting to your left, sitting to your right, that you cannot compare yourself to them. So if you see your classmates and they're in your face like, hey, I just got this audition, where are you going? Don't compare yourself. I know that's easier said than done, but you have to really keep saying that message to yourself over and over and over again. Everybody has a unique circumstance and everybody makes a different decision in adherence to their unique set of circumstances. So be confident in the work that you've done. And hey, if you didn't get an audition, because I know they're hard to come by, especially these days, it seems like it's not the end of the world. You're going to be okay. If you have passion for this field, if you've had experiences that show that said passion, you're going to be okay.
And go ahead, Lamar.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to echo that and say, like, those are so many good points. Like, put your wellness first. Don't take any losses. Protect your energy. If, programs not giving you that time, put it into yourself. Make yourself a better candidate. Many programs were impressed with my leadership qualities, like some of you guys alluded to. And that's the things that they talked about, not even necessarily my interest in career-wise or my, otherwise. So put your energy into yourself always. That's my parting words.
Right. And so I guess I'm curious, Joon, because you chose not to do audition rotations, I am assuming, but I want to make sure it's correct. At your home institution, were you doing like electives in psychiatry to demonstrate your interest in this field, or how did that work?
My med school does not have a home program. My only psychiatric rotation was actually in the outpatient setting. So I've never seen a acutely psychotic patient until I started residency. So that was it was vastly different than what you see on the outpatient setting. But you know, like we talked about with the self-disclosure, right? It's the collection of our experiences that gives us a passion to pursue certain careers. And I felt like my life experiences really gave me a calling to serve patients in this regard. And having an additional rotation or two was not going to change that. So yeah, I basically did one outpatient psych rotation. I did one elective for addiction medicine.
Okay.
But that was
awesome.
about it. That was about it. My mentality was just like, all right, I need to like take care of myself. I'm gonna try to do as little as possible while still, you know, maximizing my chances of getting into the program. And here I am, sitting here with you guys today as a, you know, as a physician, as a psychiatry resident. So it certainly worked out for me. And I remember when I was in that process, I was anxious as hell. There's so many things that you can't control. Luck is also a big element in this as well. And
love yourself.
Yeah.
Love yourself.
Love yourself. Yeah. Take care of yourself. And just remember that this isn't the end of the race. You're still going to be running for a few more years. So yeah, protect yourself. Make sure that you still you're taking care of yourself and you have the energy and the mental fortitude to continue to carry on as an intern, as a second year, third year, fourth year, and then as a attending.
Amen.
Right. And so I guess what I would want to say is, you know, realize as an applicant, you're not going to, there's no such thing as a person who checks every single box. Like Joon was saying, you know, he didn't necessarily do the most amount of auditions. I guess not even the most amount of elective time, but still able to articulate to admissions committees, or I guess that's what they called, residency admissions committees. I don't know. You got more than one interview, you know, right? You got considered at more than one place, and I actually only ended up doing an elective rotation, an audition rotation at one place. And, you know, I think COVID was a big factor for me. I really was actively trying to look for places. It was not a conscious decision for me to only get one. I definitely wanted to do a lot more. And I had that one experience that I talked about where they shafted me. But in lieu of that, you know, I did as many elective experiences in psychiatry as I could. But I really liked what you were saying, you know, highlighting your need for addressing your own mental health, your own well-being. And I think that recognition is actually what's going to make you a tremendous psychiatrist, right? And I think you probably articulated that in your interviews. So, you know, I remember in my fourth year, one thing that I enjoyed doing is I actually did a few rotations completely like unrelated to psychiatry. I was doing like some ortho surgery, some neurosurgery. I hated waking my ass up really early in the morning, but I got to see some cool stuff. And, you know, I remember even the surgeons were like, wait, you're a fourth year who's going to psych? Like, why are you here? And so I think like realizing as a medical student, there's a reason it's 4 years. It shouldn't be, as much as I wish the process was shorter, you know, take advantage of those experiences where you can broaden your medical knowledge and get out and see some interesting, wild, cool shit. Because, geez, you're paying for it, right? You know, you might as well try to broaden your knowledge as much as you can. And keep this all in perspective, because I'm going to say this again. There are more applicants than seats available. So there's so many things outside of your control here. So just take care of yourself. You know, spread a wide net, be flexible, that realize that even if you do have this passion for psychiatry, there is a chance that, of course, you might not match into psychiatry, and that's okay. You can still treat psychiatric disease if you're an emergency room physician, if you're an IM physician, a family med physician, whatever. You know, every single physician out there is going to interact with mental illness in some capacity.
And I think that's a great place to leave it.
Boom.